Hello.
Warning, incoming game over. Warning, incoming game over.
Hello, and welcome to Game Over Winnipeg. My name is Brendan Labarre, and the Winnipeg Jets defeated the Stanley Cup champion 6-3 on this fine November, what's today? November 19th, 2024. Welcome to Game Over Winnipeg. Again, I'm Brendan Labarre, and we are here at Game Over Winnipeg. We are 93 subscribers strong. Now, remember, if you subscribe, we will get to see the anti-Paul Maurice shirt. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, like the video, and watch, and just, have a good time. Be active in chat. This is my show as much as it is your show. So please join in on all the fun Game Over Winnipeg festivities as we celebrate this win of our Winnipeg Jets. So before we get going, check out our flagship show of the Game Over Network, which is Hyper Drive Hockey. It is all things hockey across various leagues in multiple countries. Whatever it is and wherever it is, Max, Daphne, and Kev have you covered for all your hockey news with a steady dose of fun and fan engagement. You can find Hyperdrive Hockey on the Game Over Network YouTube channel or wherever you stream your favorite podcasts on the Hyperdrive Hockey page at thegameovernetwork.com. With that said, let's get into the game. We are in our first period, and usually in our first period here at Game Over Winnipeg, we really like to go into the game, kind of see what was going on, how we got to the end result. So when we began this game, one thing that kind of throws you off right away is Mark Scheifele started the game. Usually it's always Adam Lowry, and you could kind of see when you looked across at the other side, it was the second line. Usually the way the matchups kind of go is Lowry matches up against the other team's first line, then Mark Scheifele will match up against the other team's second line, and with the Oilers line matching up against the other team's third line. And that being said, it wasn't very unreasonable for the Mark Scheifele line to start because with Paul Maurice having the starting, kind of gets set aside who's starting the game. He started the Matthew Tkachuk line. Made sense that Mark Scheifele would be out there. But it kind of leaves you kind of thinking, is that the most optimal way? Because usually when the Winnipeg Jets start the Adam Lowry, and they usually get that first little push. And I thought that off of that first shift, they kind of went in there, the Mark Scheifele line, and they didn't get much kind of going in there. And you kind of felt like, okay, like, or is this going to be kind of a retread? The Winnipeg Jets came into this game with their longest losing streak of the season, and we kind of see what kind of trends and what kind of things would kind of lead them away from that. So we kind of get through that first shift where like the Mark Scheifele line doesn't go too strong, but then the Lowry line's out there and things are great, things are fine, and you really see this forecheck in this game that you kind of got to know, you kind of got to see it play out throughout, and that, which kind of became a overall theme of the game tonight. So one thing that kind of got the Winnipeg Jets into the game is you could tell that when they got back to Winnipeg after their little road trip there, it felt like they kind of lost a few things in their game. They lost some of that patience that they have been kind of known for since last season, and they lost additionally some of those like really nice short passes that they were known for making. And with that, some of those things really came in off of the goals and the plays that we saw throughout the game. So when it came to the first goal, Dylan Samberg behind the net, he makes a super long pass to Gabe Vilardi, who's like at the red line, right at center. And one thing that the Winnipeg Jets have been really like trying to implement in their game lately is making a cross ice dump. So if they're on one side of the ice, they cross into the opposite corner, which kind of makes the defense turn around, do some different things, kind of harder to retrieve the puck. And with that, Gabe, and especially if you kind of know you're going to do that, you can really attack that side. So that is exactly what happened. You had Gabe Vilardi chip the puck kind of way over everyone's head, land in a defenseman's feet. It's bouncing. They have a battle with Mark Scheifele, and then it bounces up to Kyle Connor, and Kyle Connor just goes to the backhand, gets it in the net. What a beautiful time to be alive. The Jets are up 1-0. And this top line kind of dominance at 5 on throughout the game kind of continued. We have the Winnipeg Jets score another goal with their top line with, let's see where we're at with the thing. We have another thing with the Winnipeg Jets where we have this beautiful cycle, which is started by Nick Ehlers. And as the top line really gets going and kind of keeps this pressure, and they're at the outside, but they're wearing down this Florida Panthers team. So, and then there's this like little stretch where we've been talking about 4-foot passes a lot and how the Winnipeg Jets kind of use these really short passes to gain possession, but also like just make the opponent turn on their heels. And so there was an entry on this play where Josh Morrissey, gives it to Gabe Vilardi for the entry, who's able to take a few steps in, drop to Mark Scheifele, and he just absolutely rips it. And it was just, what a beautiful goal for the first Winnipeg Jet, the first drafted guy to come in, make that play, make that shot. It was just lovely to see. And those were all the goals in the first. So when we get in the second, things were looking a little scary. The Winnipeg Jets defense, I believe it was Fleury, it was Pionk, and it was Samberg, all decided that the puck was a grenade. They were just throwing it away, and it was not really what the Winnipeg Jets do when they are succeeding. They're more kind of stoic, they're more kind of patient, they're more kind of making better decisions. And it really reminded me of when I was playing youth hockey and we had a coach. He was an assistant coach, and he drove a helicopter in the Air Force. And so one time we were doing the same thing, and he comes into the locker room and he looks at us and he says, "Guys, nobody's shooting at you. I know what it's like to be shot at. Take your time. It's not that bad." And it felt like there was kind of a regroup there where the Winnipeg Jets kind of settled into the period and they kind of got some momentum. And then they drew the 5-on-3. And we're going to talk about the power play a little bit more in the second period here today. But they drew the 5-on-3. Nothing comes from it. And you're like, oh, that's not great. So, and then we have some 4-on-4 action. Mark Scheifele roughs it up in front of the net. And then Nino takes a tripping penalty as well. And with that kind of tripping penalty from Nino Niederreiter, you see a really beautiful penalty kill, which we're going to be talking about. Again, we're talking about special teams in the second period. That's a second period thing. We'll talk about that beautiful penalty kill in there. We have Josh saying, woo, noted Toronto Maple Leafs fan, Josh saying, woo, the Atlantic isn't invincible. Yeah, as a Toronto Maple Leafs fan, he sees plenty of those Atlantic teams in the playoffs. Also, Josh, make sure you're subscribing. If we get to 100 subscribers today, and we are currently at 93, we are ripping off the jersey, and we are wearing the anti-Paul Maurice shirt. So as a Leafs fan, one of his former teams where he also didn't win anything, you can see just a great shirt with Paul Maurice's face on it. It's kind of crossed out. It's a really fun shirt. Where were we? Oh, so and then we had another goal. Another Mark Scheifele goal. And this one was on the power play. And again, we're talking about the power play in the next segment. Stick around if you want to talk about the power play. The power play for the Winnipeg Jets is such a fun topic. We're going to make it a whole segment. So we kind of keep on going through this game. We keep on having momentum. And there was this point where we have Carter Vorhage, and he's coming in on Neil Pionk. And Neil Pionk today on the rush, he was playing like he was in Colorado. And this is just with a little bit of time left in the second period, about 3-4 minutes. And Neil Pionk strips it from him, sends it up to Appleton, and Adam Lowry just misses a wide open cage on the other side. Could have had a tap and just kind of healed it, which, that happens. But then they come back on the rush. This is like such a hockey thing. And they come back, and Adam Lowry, doing his offensive stuff, he hits a guy behind the net, loses a stick, stands up, tries to retrieve his guy, goes back to engage, puck goes off his foot and in. And you're just thinking, as a Winnipeg Jets fan, you're like, is all of our, not luck, the Winnipeg Jets they've been playing pretty well, but there is some luck. They're pretty high in terms of shooting percentage. They're always going to look high in save percentage, so their PDO is naturally going to be kind of high. And you got to think, like, is it all going to be coming down here? And then you come into the second period, and the second period starts off pretty sloppy. Things are going back and forth. The puck's been thrown around. It gets kind of mishmashy, and you're not really sure who this is benefiting. Because is it going to be just a bounce that goes in? Is that going to benefit the Jets because they'll be able to take advantage of something? But then we have a really strong second line shift from the Cole Perfetti, Nikolai Ehlers, Vlad Nemestikov line, and they come out and they're cycling and they're doing all these things. It was like a minute and a bit, and they're doing all these plays, and you can see what the Winnipeg Jets strategy is in this moment, because every time there's like a 50-50 battle, or the forwards didn't know what to do with the puck, the Winnipeg Jets were just slapping it down low to the Florida Panthers D. And you kind of look at that D on that Florida Panthers team, and you're just kind of thinking, that makes a little sense. We got a second pairing of Nikola and Kulikov. And with that, you're like, okay, those guys might not be the best puck handlers. So if we kind of get it down low, we kind of get it in their hands, it might be a little bit easier to get it back. And they kept on getting it back. They kept getting it back until Cole Perfetti got a penalty. And it was a little bit of a weak call, but what are you going to do? It kind of became a theme later on in the game. And then again, another special teams thing we'll talk about later. But Sam Reinhart scores a goal to get the Florida Panthers just a little bit closer. And then there was just a bunch of penalties, a bunch of things happen. There was a Josh Morrissey trip on Kachuk. Nemestikov gets another trip. And then a bunch of things happen. There's a lot of penalties that's going on. And the Jets are kind of holding on. And then Morgan Barron, the Jets are up 4-3. He makes this beautiful play. He takes his time, and this is the patience we've been talking about. When the Winnipeg Jets are great, they are patient. And he takes his extra steps and banks it off the boards into the net. One of the greatest empty net goals I've ever seen. And you just feel like this, like the game is over. We can relax in Jets land. The Winnipeg Jets win, and then he gets another one. Good guy Morgan Barron, and the Winnipeg Jets win 6-3. So it's just a lovely game. We have Ken saying Bear knows the angles. He sure does. He definitely. I saw a tweet. I think it was from Art Murat. And he was like, well, Barron went to Cornell, so he definitely knows a thing or two about a thing or two. And I thought that was pretty funny. Morgan Barron, what a beautiful, beautiful man. Definitely pulled out the protractor on that one. And with that, that was kind of the story of the game. We're going to kind of get into some more detailed things. We're going to get into the power play, the penalty kill. But before we do, let me tell you that the Game Over Network is an independent production focused on community, inclusion, and quality people. If you're interested in supporting the Game Over Network, we have crowdfunding options available. In the description of this episode, you'll find a link to our Patreon page. We're also working on a page through LaRouque, a crowdfunding platform for companies originating in Quebec. For LaRouque, we're aiming to raise $15,000, and if we hit that goal, we'll gain access to government grants that will allow us to employ more people. If you have any ideas for what you'd like to see as giveaways with these crowdfunding efforts, let us know in the comments on Twitter, Instagram, or Discord server, Anything helps. Just let us know what you want to see. If you're tired of seeing my face on Game Over Winnipeg, well then, if we can hire more people, you can see a lot less of me. Maybe you can take up the mantle. And with that, we will get into our second period. So, I have a little bit of beef with the Winnipeg Jets coaching staff right now. One thing that drives me absolutely up a wall, and this is a me thing. This isn't a common knowledge, one person, there's the other thing, but I hate when there is a really good power play. Like you got the Winnipeg Jets power play, which is lovely. It's first in the league. It's amazing. Or like when the Washington power play or the Edmonton power play, when they have this great 5-on-4 power play, they get a 5-on-3 and they're like, you know what? We're going to put like 2 guys on the goal line. And for me, it's like, why are you doing? They're like, no, trust me. It's going to work. We're going to put 2 guys on the goal line. And you're like, why? Don't you want more one-timer? You want better angles? You want like more people up high so you can get the shot from high to low? And they're like, no. We need them on the goal line. And so you kind of saw that power play, that kind of formation they made. It was kind of like a 2-1-2 instead of a 1-3-1. And you really saw the Winnipeg Jets kind of lose their way on that 5-on-3. And it became because they weren't doing the things that make them special. They weren't doing all this movements. They weren't having all this like cycling and moving around and retrieving and giving back and giving goes. They were just kind of standing still. And there was even a time where Josh Morrissey and Kyle Connor were just kind of playing pass with each other to try and set up Kyle Connor for a one-timer. It's like, this is not the Winnipeg Jets power play. And it was so nice when they got another opportunity and were able to do it again. There was I believe it was the third goal with Mark Scheifele, where we have Kyle Connor and we have Mark Scheifele, and it was for sure the third goal. It was they had this all this time. They had all this puck control, and they were cycling, they were moving around, they were getting it going, and then Nikolai Ehlers does a straight cross crease because of all this confusion and all this movement. He gets that cross ice pass over to Mark Scheifele. And I think that the most underrated player on this play, they weren't even talking about the broadcast, is when Kyle Connor, he's doing his little cycle and he makes this movement through the middle and it drags Barkov with him, which opens up that center lane. The puck goes straight through and just clears the way. Beautiful, lovely play. And then you think back to that 5-on-3 and you're like, okay, there was one less guy. Why are we just not doing the same thing? We barely practice the 5-on-3, I'm assuming. Because you're more likely to be practicing the 5-on-4 compared to the 5-on-3, and we have the best one in the league. Why aren't we just doing what works? And that's just my personal vendetta against the 5-on-3 2-1-2 power play. Let me know what you think. Maybe I'm completely wrong. Maybe there's a reason why we do that, but it just drives me nuts. And you just see that comparison from when it's working and when it's not, and how the Winnipeg Jets just are better at the other one. And then you can even see it on Mark Scheifele's hat-trick goal. They're just causing havoc. They're moving it around. They're causing chaos, and they completely tire out to the Florida Panthers penalty killers to the point where Nikolai Ehlers drops his stick, makes it a 4-on-4. That's fine. We're just going to keep it. We're never actually even going to lose the zone. And then you know what we're going to do? We're going to have Gabe Vilardi break his stick off a pass reception. Is that going to stop us? Absolutely not. He's going to go get a stick. We're just going to hold it onto it for a second. We'll be back later. That's awesome. Let's keep it up. So just that unfathomable 2-1-2, which is my personal vendetta, and that drives me nuts. Maybe you guys have some insight for the 2-1-2, why that works, but this is going to happen every 5-on-3 throughout the season, and I'm going to complain about it unless it works, because then I get to just say, well, a broken clock's right twice a day. And I think, like, just with that movement, it's just so, it almost feels like, because when they had a great power play in 2018, they were a little bit more standing still. It was a little bit more, okay, we're just going to have Wheeler come down the side. He's going to make that cross ice pass, and Line is just going to be able to kind of put it in, or Scheifele's going to get it. It was more like the Washington Capitals power play in their heyday, whereas we have the multiple right-handed options, and we're gonna like we had TJ Oshie in the slot, which is where Mark Scheifele was in 2018. We had John Carlson at the point where Dustin Byfuglien was, and we had Laine where Ovechkin was. But with this kind of more fluid power play with guys just moving around all the time, it feels more like they took inspiration. They're like, we don't have a big shot, we don't have, or multiple big shots. We don't have Byfuglien, or we don't have Patrick Laine. And what they did is they kind of took more inspiration from the top power play from the past couple of years, which is the Edmonton power play. They're like, okay, what kind of works for these guys is they have a good guy in front like Zach Hyman or Gabriel Velarde in our case, and they have just, we don't have a Connor McDavid or a Leon Draisaitl, but what we do have is we have just guys who can move around. We have Josh Morrissey, who's very slick at the blue line, and we can just kind of take inspiration from that. And that seemed to be what they did when generating the power play this season. Other than that, when it comes to what else, I didn't see the last two games, the ones they lost. I saw a bit of the Tampa one. I saw a little bit less of the Florida one. I saw some of the highlights. But one of the things that was kind of a major talking point going into the season was the top line. And I think with the top line, since I couldn't really see the game, I definitely had to go read some local Winnipeg Jets coverage. So I went to our local newspaper, the Winnipeg Free Press, and I read Ken Weeb's article from the following the game. And one of the topics was the top line. And that's kind of been a topic all season. So with them, Ken Wiebe wrote in his article, the top line was, it was a tough outing for the Jets top line of Mark Scheifele in relation to the Florida Panthers. Mark Scheifele, Kyle Connor, and Gabe Velarde, as they were held off the scoreboard for the second time in as many games after their offensive explosion against the New York Rangers. The trio managed to combine for 5 shots on goal, 2 of each for Connor and Scheifele, 1 for Velarde, with 0 high danger scoring chances at 5-on-5, while allowing 2 of them, according to Natural Stat Trick. By being on the ice for 1 goal against at even strength, the top line has now scored 11 goals at 5-on-5 and given up 12. Now, I'm no mathematician, but 11 is less than 12, so that's not great. But you can see that whenever the first line, the Connor, Scheifele, Velarde line, when Scott Arniel was hired, I thought for sure the first line, definitely by this point in the season, was going to be Ehlers, Scheifele, Velarde, because when they had so much success in January last year when Scott Arniel was the head coach, they used Ehlers in that spot. And then they, whenever Scott Arniel kind of had the reins, he would be like, okay, one thing goes wrong, we're putting Ehlers back on that top line. And that was such consistent through last year that you thought he was definitely going to make that move as soon as he can. But it feels like whenever the Winnipeg Jets kind of are having a struggle, when that line's having a struggle, they throw Ehlers up on there for a bit. They did this in a few games where they've had some troubles, and they did that against Florida. And it's almost like okay, guys, I don't want to do this, but I will. Show me why I shouldn't in the next game. And that's happened a couple of times where after they had a really tough game, they go up against Detroit and they just explode. And today they had a tough game. They had a tough couple, and they come out against Florida, and Mark Scheifele scores a hat-trick. Kyle Connor is a beautiful goal, and Gabe Velarde is in charge of a lot of great plays that led to these goals. And it seems like when Scott Arniel, he talked about meeting with his leadership group during the summer, and that would include guys like Scheifele, Connor, Morrissey. And I'm willing to bet that one of the things that Scheifele talked about is like, hey, I want to be playing with Kyle Connor. And I think Scott Arniel made that a point of conversation. He's like, yeah, I'll let you start, but as soon as it doesn't work for me, then we're kind of done here. And I think that's just kind of something where it's motivating for them, because if Mark Scheifele truly thinks that that's how this team's going to win, well, then he's going to have to prove it to Scott Arniel. And so far, every single chance that they've had, they've done so. And with that, let me remind you to like and subscribe this video. If you're listening to on podcast, please rate us. Probably 5 stars. I think 5 stars would be pretty good. A reminder that we are 93 subscribers. We get please let's get us to 100. Liking and subscribing, super easy way to support the channel. And then let me tell you about Game On Winnipeg. Game On Winnipeg is a show that will be coming to Winnipeg. It's a daily show hosted by Harrison Lee, which will be in under 10 minutes. It gives you all your daily Winnipeg Jets news in under 10 minutes. for the weekdays. So Monday to Friday, it's a super concise way to kind of be caught up on all things in Jets land. Ville Heinola was just sent on a conditioning stint. What does that mean? How many days does that mean he's going to be on the Moose? When's he coming back? Those are things that Harrison Lee will tell you on Game on Hockey when that is available to us as Winnipeg Jets fans. So that's coming very soon. Look out for it on the Game Over Network and Game Over Winnipeg right here, which you should like and subscribe to. Please, it's a super easy way to help the channel. All right, and then with that, let's get to the third period. And in the third period, I want to talk about things that are going to be really tough for the Winnipeg Jets going on. In the third period here at Game Over, we're allowed to, as hosts, talk about whatever we want. And I want to talk about travel. Travel, it sucks. And we talked about Paul Maurice. Paul Maurice would always tell us how hard his schedule is. And it's like, well, Paul Maurice, you coach in the Western Conference. It's always going to be hard, especially for Winnipeg, where our closest team is like Minnesota. And they're always moving. We're always like flying around everywhere. It's not like the East where you're like, if you're playing in New York and you go play in New Jersey, you're sleeping in your own bed that night, you know? And I think it's especially hard with the way that the schedule's kind of gone for the Winnipeg Jets. They've played a lot on the road. And not only that, this game today was the second time where they come back from a road trip, play one game, go back on the road. And so what essentially it did is it turned this like 3-game, and then it's like this last road trip, and then the next road trip, it just turns into one long like 10-game road trip, which effectively is going to take up a quarter of their season by the time it's all said and done, or even no, more like a third. And I think just with that, it's like you can kind of see when they were going into Tampa, it felt like they had heavier legs. It felt like those puck battles, they were on them second. They had a little bit less gas in the tank, especially since Tampa had, I think it was 6 days off before we went into that game. And so like one thing that Ken Wiebe was talking about in that same article was the Panthers won nearly every race to loose pucks, displaying second effort all over the ice, and the Jets simply had no answer, falling 5-0 on Saturday night. And I think with the Winnipeg Jets kind of playing the style they do, and with the roster set up the way it is, they're not going to be able to, when they get into the playoffs, and we have to talk about the playoffs every single show, every single game, because where the Winnipeg Jets are at right now, that's really all that matters. And so when we kind of go into these next few months and these next few games, we need to be sure that like, okay, we're not using that as an excuse. We need to be able to prepare for being on the road for weeks, months at a time. And also, like, I think one thing I heard, or I know I heard this, I remember listening to an interview. It was either with Leclerc or Eric Lindros of the Flyers in the 90s. And one thing they would do is, okay, we need to be so used to things on the road because of the grind of the Stanley Cup playoffs that when they were in Philadelphia at home, they would still just stay in a hotel. They'd stay at a hotel when their homes are 10 minutes away. And that's just to kind of keep you in the fight and keep you in the grind. Now, I think that is absurd. I'm not recommending the Jets do this, even when they have these 1-game trips, but it's just like you need to be prepared for that mentality. And I think the way that this kind of season's kind of going, the way that they are kind of shaping up for a long playoff run, these next 6 games on the road are so crucial for the Winnipeg Jets to kind of embrace that grind mentality, embrace that, okay, we need to find that effort. We need to find that kind of secondary, almost source of energy every single night. And then with that, oh yeah, Morgan Barron scored twice tonight. Morgan Barron is a guy we got in the Andrew Kopp trade. He is a beautiful player. He's very nice on the fourth line. And it was so nice to see him finally got on the score sheet. He's the only Winnipeg Jets player who has not scored this year. Or not the only Winnipeg Jets player. He's like the only forward who hasn't scored this year. And except for David Gustafsson, but we're not counting him. And one thing about Morgan Barron is it seemed like when the fourth line was going last year, it didn't matter who was on it. It just mattered that Morgan Barron was there. And he was such a noticeable guy that they couldn't replace in the playoffs when he got hurt. He had that kind of freak injury And in those few games, there was just no replacing that man. And with kind of him being the kind of not weak link, but just weak in terms of who's gotten the offensive stats, um, it's just kind of a reminder of how nice it is, like when those fourth line players score, and how important he is to this team, because he's a guy who everyone on this team plays a role. He's a penalty killer. He takes a lot of left-hand zone faceoffs. When the Winnipeg Jets are coming off of their great power play, if they don't score, him, Lowry, and Appleton are there to set the tone. And I think just him coming into the year, I kind of had more expectations. You know, he scored more than 10 goals last year. You'd think he'd have 1 or 2 by now, but now he does. And it's one of those things where you didn't want to have to worry about him. You did not have to worry about him. And hopefully this puts a little bit of a pep in his step. I remember when Matthew Perreault came to the Winnipeg Jets, one thing that kind of held him back, you were kind of like, is he really that player? We have him for 3 years. Hopefully he works out. And as soon as he scored a goal, he turned it on. And hopefully that's one thing where that fourth line can kind of find another level offensively, because all those guys are now scoring. They can kind of chip it in with more regularity. All right. And with that, we'll kind of transition into the overtime period. This is the part of the show where you guys can ask me anything. You ask me things about the Jets. You can ask me things that are not about the Jets. It can kind of go either way. All you have to do is type in the chat. And while you're typing the chat, I'm just going to tell you about our wonderful merch here at Game Over Winnipeg. Game Over Winnipeg. What better way is there to support something you love than by rocking us clothing? Game Over Winnipeg's apparel line has dropped. That's not the right thing. And we have hoodies. We have mugs. I've been drinking out of this mug the entire show. It is so lovely. It is so lovely. Look at this thing. It's such a nice design. We have the nice skater head over here. It is beautiful. I love it. I think I got like 3 of these in the house. Multiple people are getting them for Christmas. It's just a wonderful gift. So make sure that you check it out. We have more than just these 2 things. These are just the 2 things I own. They are the sweater, super comfortable. It comes in that navy, it comes in the black, and it's just such a nice thing to own and wear. And with that, I'm just going to keep the QR code on the screen. We don't have any questions coming in just yet, but hopefully some coming soon. And if not, we'll just wrap up the show. What else? Let's see our subscriber check. We were trying to get to 100 tonight. We are at 93 still. Unfortunately, we didn't get any more, but you know what? That's showbiz, baby. Anyway, well, if we have any questions, I'll answer them. But until then, I will kind of wrap up here. Our next show is Friday, November 22nd. The Winnipeg Jets play at 6 p.m. in Pittsburgh against the Penguins. And Ty will be live at about 8:45 whenever the game ends. Thank you so much for watching Game Over Winnipeg. Remember to like and subscribe to the Game Over Winnipeg. It really is such an easy way. We say we had Josh in the string. Hey man, had to work the game. My buddy Josh, he works in the ticket sales department. Had to work the game and just got back. Lovely. Josh saw my parents at the game. They were there. They saw the beautiful 6-3 game. Thanks for watching, Josh. Josh has seen every single Game Over Winnipeg. And he's asking us a question in our question period. Let's go. Do you think the Barron back-to-back goals was the fastest by a single player? Oh, definitely not. It might be the fastest. I don't think so. That's definitely look upable, but I think maybe on the Jets. But I think 11 seconds is not the fastest. I believe that's what the fastest time was. It might be like in a while. I don't recall a Winnipeg Jet doing it. I think Brian Little did it randomly against the Columbus Blue Jackets, or they had a really fast play in like 2017 or 2018, 2019. I just remember that Brian Little had one of them. He might have not had both of them, but I think that's the record. We might have to look that up and get back to you, Josh. But I think it was against the Columbus Blue Jackets. Brian Little was for sure still playing, and if not, then I'm a liar. But I think it was Brian Little in like 2017. And I think it was on a goalie too. But I definitely think Barron has the fast track there. And yeah, I'll continue wrapping up if we have nothing else. Yeah, so like and subscribe, Game Over Winnipeg. We'll be back on Friday again. Thank you so much for watching. If you've gotten this far and you haven't subscribed, what are you doing? Subscribe. It's free and easy, and it's a great way to support the channel. Once again, thank you so much. The Winnipeg Jets broke their longest winning streak of the season, and I will see you guys next time. I think my next game is December 1st, but enjoy Ty. Ty's amazing. He's doing a great job here as well, and I'll see you guys later.